Hi friends, this is my long overdue review of All Fours by Miranda July. So first, I just want to start off by saying I avoided this book. I did not want to read it, mainly because of the trope, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. But it ended up on the long list for two prizes that I follow. And that was the Women's Prize for Fiction and the Carol Shields Prize for Fiction. As of when I'm filming this, we don't know what book won the Women's Prize for Fiction 2025. I think that's coming out in a week or so. We do know that it did not win the Carol Shields Prize. So the story, we're going to start off by talking about the story. It is about a 45-year-old woman who is a mother. Her child is, I can't remember the age. I want to say like 8 or 9-ish, maybe a little younger. And her husband, who she's been with for some time. And she is a semi-famous, as described in the book and the synopsis, she's a semi-famous artist. We kind of get to see a little bit of that, but not much. Like, it's not so much about that. She does, she's a writer. I think she's a sculptor or a painter or both. It talks a little bit about different arts that she does. And she, decides to take a job in New York. They live in California. She's taking a job or commission type thing in New York. And she decides that she's going to drive to New York, which surprises both her and her husband. It's something out of character for her. And so there's a lot of talk about in the beginning about her path, how she's going to go. And as it says in the synopsis, she only gets 30 minutes away and she stops. And then we start to get into more of the things that she's dealing with. Some of her behaviors are a little odd. She goes to this motel in a small town and ends up redecorating the room. Yeah, it's just strange. And she meets a young man I think he's in his 20s, that kind of catches her eye, and she becomes interested, obsessed, however you want to say it, in this man. While all of this is going on, she also shares with the reader that she had sort of a traumatic birth experience with her child. They were told that the child wouldn't live because of a certain condition, and most don't. And so she kind of ends up feeling some survivor's guilt because her child did survive. But there's a lot of trauma related to that and grief around the birth of her child that should have been a happy time, but they had this condition hanging over them. The child stayed in the hospital for a while. So there's kind of some emotional stuff that she's going on related to that. She ends up having a relationship of sorts with this man that she saw at the gas station, and kind of looking at his life and her working through kind of her feelings about it and how it would impact her marriage. The story itself, I think, was fine. It was easy to follow. The writing was good. I mean, she's not a likable character at all, but if you're a woman in your 40s, she might be relatable. Let's just say that. The reason I wanted to do a separate review for this book, which I'm not going to hold up anymore, is because it is that trope that I can't stand, is that women in their 40s, middle-aged women, the only trope I really see, there's not a lot about, or there aren't a lot of main characters that are women in their 40s. And if you've been on watching my channel for a minute, you know I've been looking for that. And what put me off of All Fours was that it was a trope I've read before. Like, if there are stories about women in their 40s, it's about leaving their family, going in, having an affair with a younger man. And I'm just, that's not something I want to read about. I did listen to a quick interview with Miranda July about why she wrote this, because it is a very decisive book. People either love it or they hate it. And when I read it, I was falling on the hate side of it. I just didn't like it. And she talked about how women her age, her friends, who are in their 40s, have partners and children, and they want to see more main characters who look like them. They're just not there. And I agree. And so I applaud Miranda July for focusing on a woman in her 40s. And maybe this is the story that everyone is familiar with, of leaving house and home and going off to find younger men. The other part of that is that in the stories that I've read, including All Fours, is kind of the reason why all of that happens. And it's really when we start talking about perimenopause and menopause. And those are terms that I think are becoming more acceptable to say out loud, right? But for women and their reproductive health, there's been the societal messages that we get. So there is value in this book. There are good messages in this book. The discussion about perimenopause and menopause, I think, is pretty accurate. Because it's like, there are times when she says, I don't want, like, laughs at the suggestion. That's not me. I'm not there. Because in society, I think women are, this is my experience, is that women get messages that when you go into perimenopause and menopause, you're old. There's nothing, you can't have kids, so you're old. So, you know, they talk about put her out to pasture. And that does a lot to a woman's mental health. Also, the biological effects of perimenopause and menopause do a lot to a woman's emotional state. That is pretty accurate, I would say. From the research I've done, from what I've experienced myself, it can be, I'll say that, it can be pretty life-altering. And we're kind of in that process with our main character of these things are happening and she's feeling all these things, dissatisfaction with her relationship, the grief and that trauma related emotion from the birth of her child. She talks kind of offhandedly about her career, kind of makes little jabs at it, like the semi-famous artist, and having to take jobs because you never know what's next. So there's a lot of dissatisfaction and reflection on her life, which, I think that's pretty accurate. You're middle-aged, and there's a lot of focus on that experience, at least in the US, where it is that time of life where you start to question, you start to look at your life and say, is this what I want? Is this fulfilling my needs? I will say a lot of my friends who do have kids and spouses or partners, their kids are in high school and going off to college, and that is an ending of taking care of kids. They're growing up, they're moving on. So there are a lot of things that happen for women in their 40s. And so I think that it's a good thing to talk about, and I would love more books about it. I do also think that the book, talking about, she does have this kind of internal voice that is questioning her moves and motives, her choices, and I think that's kind of, in my mind, as I read it, it's what she's been taught by society about a woman getting older. A woman's value is having children, and that story. And so her rational voice is bringing her back in the moment. What are you doing with this stranger? What are you looking for? What are you trying to find? So then she starts to examine her own marriage and relationship, which takes an interesting turn, I will say, in parts 3 and 4. I felt like the character is, the main character is not as well developed as I would like. I mean, we learn a lot about her. We learn a lot of facts about her. But we're just kind of dropped into her life, which does happen. I mean, some fiction does that. It just didn't work for me in that sense. To me, she seemed definitely to have that privilege, and that would never happen to me type stuff, or I would never act like that. In some of her conversations, that irked me. But again, she's not a likable character. The main character ends up doing kind of a project of what other women that she knows feel about this age in society. It's called a midlife crisis. I don't particularly like that. Which there's a YouTuber that I'll link below, Andrea Severson. She is a writing instructor, PhD. She is in her early 40s, I think, and she calls it a midlife reset. I love that and totally embracing that. But this book, it makes it more of a crisis, and I guess that's being the same age. I don't want that message to continue, even though it's that struggling with it is a message that women get and women experience. Is it a crisis? Does it have to be a crisis? If you go into it thinking it's a crisis, does it become a crisis? If you walk it back, can you think of it as a reset of, like my friends who kids are going off to college? Okay, I don't have this child in the house anymore, or I'm an empty nester now. What does that mean? It's a reset, time for opportunity, going this way or that way. Yeah, so I guess that's kind of where I landed with this. So I'm editing this, and I know it's a rant. I knew I was going to rant about this book. But I do want to say I was just looking through some of the GoodReads reviews of this book. And there are several scenes that are unbelievably gross in the book that I totally forgot about. I don't know how I forgot about them. And then one of the reviewers said, life's too short to be annoyed voluntarily, I think is what she said. That's just, there's part of that too. So anyway, back to the review. I ended up giving it a 3-star. I'm going to do a more thorough review or write a review on my probably GoodReads and StoryGraph, which I don't normally do more than a couple of sentences. There is one thing about disability that really bothered me, and it was in the beginning. And, you know, I said I started this with not great feelings about it. So she's talking about her assistant who helps plan all these things. And her assistant got the job because she sent out, she was let go from her job, or they laid off or something. And the assistant needed a job. So she emailed all of her college alumni class to see who had a job. And so our main character hires her as an assistant. And she basically spends a few pages telling us that the assistant doesn't know how to do her job. She's not very good at it. Also, I will say, the main character doesn't really know what her career is and what this person is supposed to be assisting her with. So kind of vague job. She basically hires her as an assistant, so that she's the main contact, and the main character can work on her work and not have to like manage all the emails and the logistics of everything. And she says, now that she was everyone's point of contact, it never felt right to ask her if she could move on, especially once she was diagnosed with fibromyalgia. Harris, her husband, loves to speculate about how much money I could have made over the years if I had a real manager instead of Liza. So, as someone with fibromyalgia, of course that's gonna hit me wrong. And I would just say, as a person with a disability, I have value in the workplace. I have skills, I have knowledge. I can do a job. It might not be that job. However, keeping someone on that has a disability as a form of pity, that just rubbed me the wrong way. But like I said, having time moved on since I read it, and I think overall, it's an important book. I'm rating a 3-star. I might recommend it to some people, and for me, a 3-star is that. Like, I didn't love it. I did not hate it like I thought I was gonna. While I say that the main character is unlikable, I also, like I said, think there are parts of her story that are relatable for me, and I would imagine for many women in their 40s. I don't agree with the choices she made, but I kind of expected that. Yeah, if it sounds like something that you would be interested in, I would say try it. Yeah, I would say try it. Don't let reviews put you off of it. But it's been very hyped, and it's been very divisive. So let me know if you've read it, what your thoughts were. What did you rate it? Would you recommend it? If you know of other books featuring a main character who is in their 40s, female, let me know, because I'm interested in reading more and just trying things out and seeing what I like. So that's kind of all I have to say about All Fours for now. I might at some point, maybe at the end of the year, reflect on it more. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate your support. If you would like to, you can subscribe and hit the like button. I will be back soon. I'm trying to get on a regular schedule of posting and talk more about some books that I hope to read this summer. I don't normally make a summer list, but I am participating in Big Book Summer again this year, and I would like to get some of these big books read. So stay tuned for that. I hope you're all doing well, and I'll see you soon. Bye.